All right, it's 12:01, so it's time to get started. My name's Terry Thompson. I see some new faces here today. I want to thank everybody for coming, and if you have any friends that would like to see this meeting, it's going to be archived, video of it it'll be on YouTube and Rumble. Okay, we always start off with a prayer, and we are blessed to have our pastor, Pastor Jack, here today, and I ask you to lead us in prayer, if you would, Pastor.
Praise God. It's good to see everybody here, and if this is your first time, I want you to come back and be with us. Amen. These meetings are important. Father, we want to thank you, Lord, that we can gather together, Lord, here in America, here, Lord, to discuss issues and to show things. And we pray, God, that you would guide us and you would direct us today. And Lord, we ask your presence in this place, Father, in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. And if I could ask our guests to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. All right. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. I've got some introductions to make. We've got a bunch of high caliber folks here today. First off, Mr. Don Spencer, the president of OK2A, sitting right over here. For those of you that don't know, Don is our lobbyist, and he's the one at the state capitol bugging the heck out of these guys. Pretty much all session. We have Senator Bill Coleman, Senate District 10, which is our senator. We have Representative Ken Luttrell over here, who is eastern Kay County and most of Osage County, right? Appreciate y'all coming. Aaron Means back here. Aaron is the chairman of the GOP down in Payne County. He's a hard-working guy. Rob Bodick back there in the standing up at the back there. Rob is the most conservative member of our Ponca City City Council, and he's making things happen there. Yeah. Scott Jessen, Scott right there, back here. Scott is one of our coordinators over in Garfield County, Enid. Joe Baden is a little guy over here with the beard. Joe is our Kay County coordinator, or Kay County chair of the GOP. He's been working real hard. Plus, you're what, in District 3?
I'm the state budget committee member from
Yeah. Let's see. And then at the back, Dr. Glenn Cope, who is my co-coordinator. He's also my pastor. And he's been a real help, and I thank you for all your help, Glenn. Oh, and Lorena Smithheiser, she's our GOP chair down in Noble County, and she works real hard. And then last but certainly not least, Stephen Phipps back there in the sound booth. These meetings wouldn't happen without Stephen. This January of this year was our 4th anniversary meeting here, and when I announced that I was forming an OK2A chapter here, he called me, and this venue fell right in my lap. I didn't even have to make one phone call to try and find a venue, and it's been much appreciated, him hosting us and Pastor Jack. Okay, we're going to get to our guest here shortly. a couple of things I want to cover. Senator Brooks is our guest today. My guess is that most, if not all, the people in this room don't agree with him on a lot of political issues. However, I want to emphasize this. He contacted me through Senator Coleman, and he initiated this contact, and he offered to come up here and speak. He drove up from Oklahoma City with the weather forecast and whatnot. So, and as always at my meetings, my guests, they are to be treated with respect, courtesy, and professionalism. We don't, at my meetings, we don't have any extraneous contact or comments from the floor. After he speaks, we'll go to questions. And the way we do questions here, those of you that are regulars here, you know how it works, but we have a lot of new faces. When it comes to question time, raise your hand. I'll call on one person at a time in the order they've raised their hands. And then please get right to your question. At a lot of meetings, they go to question time and everybody's got a 10-minute speech and no question. If you've got a speech you want to make, that's great. Come talk to me afterwards. And if you've got a valid speech, then I will book you to speak at one of my meetings. I'm always looking for somebody that's got valid points to bring up. But we're going to be polite and courteous. What's that old song? We can disagree without being disagreeable. Okay? Does anybody got any questions in regard to that? Yes, Joe. Sure, go ahead.
For those of you who are probably interested in this, Dr. Beans from Payne County and Lorna from Noble County and myself from Kay County and possibly Shauna from Osage County, we're working to put together a candidate forum for our congressional district, 3 candidates that are running for U.S. Congress. And that's going to be probably around June 8th, I think is what was the date, right, Laura? So just so that people are aware of that.
And on that same vein, I've spoken to John Pfeiffer, and he's going to be coming up to, we've got, after this meeting, 3 meetings before the primaries in June. And he's going to be coming to speak at one of the meetings, and he might be attending 1 or 2 of the other meetings just to be here and answer questions. The same offer is, I was going to talk to you hopefully today, and I'm able to. He has officially registered, right? Yes. Your opponent? Okay. Well, we'll have, you'll have that opportunity. Now, another thing. I had a couple of people contact me and want me to ask Senator Brooks about a bill or a vote from 2021. We're not going to do it. We're here today to talk about the driver's license for illegal immigrants. So we're going to keep all of our questions there. We've got restricted time. So please get to your question right away, and so he can answer it. And then we've got a lot of people here. There's going to be a lot of questions. And one of the things I'm most proud of at my meetings is everybody that has a question gets the time and the opportunity to ask it. And the only way we can do that is to move it along. So any other questions before we turn it over? Okay. First off, we're going to let Senator Coleman come up and address us, and he's going to introduce our guest.
Thank you all very much. I always enjoy coming to this grassroots group, Great Americans. Michael Brooks came in my office a couple of years ago and said, I got this idea on driver's licenses for illegal aliens. And he went on and on and on and said it does this and this and this and this and this. So as you all know, I voted for it. It's on, Joe, I think it's still on the Kay County stationery, isn't it? That's fine, Joe. It's fine. But I did. I thought it was a good idea at the time. Certainly in the environment today with immigration getting worse and worse and worse and the federal government doing absolutely nothing about it, it is a problem here in Oklahoma. We have 60,000, I believe, here now, Michael, illegal aliens.
I think closer to 85.
85,000. They are here illegally, but some of them are here providing work that we won't do. It's something that really intrigued me when he came up with it. I just want to, before I introduce him, I want to tell you he is a great man. I do not agree with him politically all the time. I do sometimes. He agrees with you guys sometimes too. It's just the way it happens down there. But if you look at this onion, The outside of the onion says illegal aliens get a driver's license. We're going to peel the onion today and tell you how you get to there. It's not just we're going to give it to them. They've got to do all kinds of things. And the expert on that, I want to introduce him now, my good friend, Senator Micheal Brooks.
All right. Hello, ladies. Hi. So, it's nice to see you all. First of all, I want to thank you guys for especially Terry, for allowing me to come and talk to your group. And so Terry was saying that probably I may be the first Democrat to ever come and speak to a chapter of Oklahoma 2A. And so it's an honor. And so as the more time that I've spent at the Capitol, I think personally, the less partisan I've become. Just because when you get there, sometimes it's the politics that motivates you to run, but once you get up there, you learn that you're there to be able to create policy, right? To be able to do things that make the state a better place. And so while Senator Coleman and I may not always agree on the path, on the way to be able to get there, I think we're both serious about trying to do things that make the state of Oklahoma better. And so me personally, I was born and raised on the south side of Oklahoma City. I went to Oklahoma State University, and more than anything, I always kind of harbored a dream of being able to run for the particular district where I grew up, Senate District 44. And so once I ran and was up at the Capitol, one of the issues that we were encountering in my district was the incidence of people that are uninsured. And so once I started to look more closely at that issue, I found out that part of the reason is because there are people who are undocumented who can't get a driver's license. Without that driver's license, they don't get insurance. And so I started to be able to do some research. And so kind of like you guys, when I know that you're all politically active and politically curious, to be able to kind of like what Senator Coleman said, start peeling away those parts of the onion to be able to see. And so the very first thing that I did is I did research to be able to find out how many undocumented people are in the state of Oklahoma. And so as of probably a year before last, the number was 85,000 people. And so, and regardless of your political stripe, I hope that all of us can agree that Washington, D.C. has failed miserably when it's come to some sort of immigration policy. Regardless of what you want to happen, they've chosen to be able to make it a political football and play it back and forth without ever getting anything done, just to be able to point fingers. And so what happened is, once I figured out that there were about 85,000 people who live in the state of Oklahoma, who've settled here, I wanted to be able to find out other things. And so one of the things, oftentimes when people have a political conversation about immigration, one of the first things that comes up is, well, they don't pay they don't pay taxes. And so one of the things that I wanted to be able to do was to be able to find out, because lots of times someone who's more conservative will say, well, they don't pay taxes. Person on the other end of the spectrum will say, oh, but they pay property taxes, sales taxes, all these mushy things, but it's not the same thing. And so what I did is one of the privileges of being a state senator is you can ask state agencies to get you information. And so the very first thing that I did is I talked to the tax commission. And so people who are undocumented can file income tax just like everybody else. And so I asked them, how many people that are undocumented in the state of Oklahoma are already paying taxes using an individual tax ID number? And so they were able to pull it out of the computer, and they were able to figure out that currently there are 33,000 people that are already using individual tax ID numbers. It's a 9-digit number. When someone can't get a social security number, it's a 9-digit number that allows people to pay taxes. Because as far as I know, the IRS will take anyone's money, regardless of immigration status, right? If you have taxable income, they're going to find a way to be able to take it. And so as a result, we were able to figure out that there were 33,000 people that are already paying taxes. And so the next step was to be able to find out how much did those people pay in income tax, state income tax, to the state of Oklahoma. And so the number I got back, in addition to what those 33,000 people were paying in federal income tax, they were paying $26 million in state income tax, right? And so there are 33,000 people paying about $26 million in state income tax. It turns out to be about $900 per tax ID number, okay? And so in the beginning, I said there were about 85,000 people, here in the state of Oklahoma. And of those 85,000, 33,000 are using tax ID numbers and already paying taxes. And so I thought that perhaps if there were an opportunity or a path to be able to get a driver's license, instead of making it contingent on Washington's failures, right? Washington has failed on immigration. Right now, the state of Oklahoma says the only way you can get a driver's license is if Washington, D.C. says that you're legal in the state of Oklahoma. So rather than continue to let have the state of Oklahoma give that power to make a decision on who gets a license in the state of Oklahoma, give that to the federal government to be able to take it back to state government. And so to be able to, rather than make it contingent on federal immigration status, make it contingent on something the state of Oklahoma can control, which is, do you pay your taxes or not? Pretty simple, right? And so if on average people pay $900 per tax ID number, and there's another 50,000 to 55,000 people who could be paying taxes but haven't started yet, you multiply those two numbers, and actually it could increase revenue in the state of Oklahoma by about $50 million. Right? Without costing anyone in this room an additional penny, and without raising or having to change our tax laws whatsoever. An additional $50 million in income to the state of Oklahoma. So then after that, then I started doing research on other states that have done this. And so currently the whole reason that I wanted to come and talk to you guys about this, just to explain that, is that as time has gone on, I know that there have been times when my bill has been used in calls to action from your organization. And so inevitably, when those go out, at my Senate office, we get calls from people that are up in arms because they've only seen the outside of that onion, right? And so they call the office and they're like, "Are you crazy? You want to give driver's licenses to illegal? What the hell are you thinking? You must be crazy." And so I wanted to come and try and explain to you what's within that onion, the layers within the onion that while you may not ever agree with me, at least it may not be crazy. I may be a little crazy, but maybe this idea may not be crazy. And so the next thing that I did is I looked at other states that have done this. And so the very first state that came up that had done this was Utah. So a good Republican conservative state. And so I did research about what happened to Utah when they expanded driver's license eligibility. And the amazing thing was that their uninsured motorist rate, right? The number of people driving without insurance dropped by 75% in 2 years. 75%. Well, that's a huge number. And so then we started to look to be able to see if those numbers held up in Oklahoma, if we did this, what difference would it make? What would happen? And so it turns out that insurance agents would stand to sell an additional $61 million in liability policies, right? And so if you sell that many insurance policies, the pool of people that have insurance grows. And so the chances that you get hit by someone who's uninsured goes down. So the estimated savings to people who are already driving with insurance turns out to be about $43 million. And so it may not be a huge amount per person, but there would be an actual savings for people who are already doing things the right way, right? And so I looked at the possibility of being able to increase revenue in the state of Oklahoma without costing existing taxpayers a penny. I looked at the chance to be able to address uninsured motorists. And then the very next thing that I did is I talked to law enforcement. And so I asked them, what would happen if more people had a driver's license? And so the first people that I talked to were from the Highway Patrol. And they said that would be a tremendous benefit to us because occasionally we have fatality accidents where we have people who die in accidents and they have no ID. And sometimes it can take 4, 6, 8 months to be able to identify who that person is. And so that was one of their main things. And so also I had a chance to speak to the sheriffs. Also had a chance to speak to the Fraternal Order of Police. And what they told me is when a police officer pulls someone over, they never know who's going to be in that car, right? But if someone has an ID, then they can check that ID on the largest law enforcement database in the country and be able to identify whether or not if that person has been previously deported, if they have a criminal record, if they have warrants for their arrest. Because if an officer can verify who this person is, it makes that officer safer. And if it makes that officer safer, most of the time it makes the people in the car safer too. And so I was able to get those endorsements when I've run this bill in the past. And so when people are scratching their heads trying to say, how is it that you get the support from the sheriffs, from policy-minded Republicans to be able to do this, is because there's lots of positive policy. And so one of the things that we talk about a lot at the Capitol is there's a lot of politics and a lot of and not nearly enough policy, in my opinion. And so to be able to come up with those good ideas that actually make people in the state of Oklahoma safer. All right. And so the very first time I ran the bill, one of the Mark Allen, one of the most conservative senators in the state of Oklahoma, he was the first person that I talked to. And what I did is I went office by office, individually speaking to senators, saying, I've got a crazy idea, but if you'll hear me out, maybe this might appeal to you. And so I got about halfway through it, and he's like, you know what? I'm for this. And I'm like, Senator Allen, I don't know if you're sure you understand, but what I'm trying to do. He goes, no, if it will lower the number of uninsured motorists, then I'm for it. And so he was the first person to be able to sign on as a co-author. And then after that, Senator Allen suggested you need to put something in the bill to be able to make it explicit that people who get this driver's license this way, they're not able to vote. And so I kind of thought it was already, and I don't know everything. I'll be the first to admit it. But I thought that had already been taken care of because I knew that non-citizens couldn't vote. But I went ahead and adopted the amendment that Senator Allen suggested, and actually it made a huge difference. And so as time's gone on, I've probably amended the bill, I want to say 5 or 6 times, every time based on something that we've encountered. And so the last time that I ran the bill last year, hello, ma'am. And so last year, whenever I ran the bill, one of the things that came up is that people, because again, these are the reasons why I've run the bill. And so, but what's happened is that last time I ran the bill, there were questions still about whether or not people would be either intentionally or unintentionally registered to vote. And so what I did is I made changes to the bill. And so the very first changes that I made to the bill is on a driver's license, right under where it says state of Oklahoma. Anybody who would get a driver's license this way, it would say non-citizen not eligible to vote on the face of the license. On the back of the license, where you have endorsements like motorcycle or eyeglasses or all those things, again, on the back of the license, it would say this person is a non-citizen and ineligible to vote in any election. And then the other thing, because I didn't realize this whenever I ran the bill, but like I said, I'm learning, keeping plugging along, is that you can register to vote using a driver's license online without actually someone being able to see what's written on the front or the back of that license. And so I wanted to try and fix that problem to be able to ensure that I could, maintain the faith and let people know that this isn't for that purpose. And so what we were able to do, talking to Service Oklahoma and the election board, is that the actual driver's license number, for anybody who would get a driver's license if my bill were able to pass, would start ITIN, which stands for Individual Tax ID Number. So that way, even if someone tries to register to vote online, just on its face, by the first 4 digits of their number, they would be able to identify this person's not a citizen and would not allow them to be able to vote. And so one of the other things that's come up recently in the past year or so is a huge concern about the failure at the border. And so I don't know if any of you will be surprised to know that I'm a Democrat and I acknowledge that there's a crisis at the border. And so it's true. I mean, I can't tell you to not believe what you're able to see with your own eyes when you watch TV. And so there is a crisis at the border. And so I can understand why members of the community are concerned about being overrun with new immigrants coming to the state of Oklahoma. And so this year, because it was an election year, I didn't necessarily plan on running my driver's license bill. But what happened is that the Attorney General and the Speaker of the House both decided that they wanted to build kind of in the style of Texas, right? To make people who are unlawfully in the state of Oklahoma, to criminalize that. And so all of a sudden I got an idea, because I can understand that if their purpose is to address people who are working in illegal industries like illegal marijuana grows or trafficking in fentanyl or trafficking in humans, all of those kinds of things, I can understand why there might be a good reason to be able to do this. But to be able to criminalize all those people, then what happens is that criminalizes the people who work as landscapers, and have been here for a long time, maybe have kids that are here. It criminalizes the people who are roofers. I don't know if you guys have had bad weather up here, but in Oklahoma City, there are roofing crews that can rip a roof off and put it back on the same day. I can almost assure you not every single person in that roofing crew is probably documented to be here in the state of Oklahoma, but they provide a valuable service. Also in agriculture. And so I can't tell you that, because whenever I'm not at the Capitol, I work as an immigration lawyer. And so I can't tell you how many times I've had people, farmers and ranchers, who've brought their number one guy, right? And said, look, Juan has worked with me for the past 15 years, and if it weren't for him, I wouldn't be in business anymore. What do I have to do to be able to get Juan his papers? It doesn't matter how much it costs. I'll do anything. And I have to inform them that the federal immigration law is so broken that there's just not a path to be able to get there. And so what happened is that exact thing happened. This is why I started to call every single person who calls my Senate office and asks me if I'm crazy for trying to expand driver's license eligibility. I try and call them back to be able to explain how it makes it safer for law enforcement. Try to explain how it increases revenue for the state of Oklahoma. How to be able to explain also how it reduces uninsured motorists, the number of uninsured motorists. So as a result, it makes all of us a little bit safer than we would be otherwise. And so the interesting thing is I call, I try and I'm as respectful as I can possibly be. And by the end of those conversations, people say, well, that's not crazy at all. And not all of them say, I love it and I'm going to vote for it. But a lot of them say, well, at least this kind of makes sense. And so what happened is that a colleague of yours, another person from another chapter of OK2A came to my office. He's a plumber, and he brought his employee, Juan. And Juan, bless his heart, had some issues in the past. There wasn't a path for him to be able to get his permanent residence, even if his boss was willing to pay for it. Just not a possibility. And so I was talking to that plumber, and I told him, I said, unfortunately, there's not a path for Juan to get his papers, but I've run a bill for the past 2 years that would have at least allowed him to be able to get a driver's license. So if you want to send him to the shop to pick up a piece of equipment, you don't have to worry about your truck being impounded if he gets pulled over. And I said, do you know the one group that opposed this vehemently? And he said, OK2A. And I said, yes, absolutely, that's it. And so starting those conversations, calling people back when they're wanting to know how I could be so crazy to do this, that same individual invited me to come talk to his chapter. And originally, I'll be honest with you, with all the politics right now and how heated and emotional and angry sometimes things are, whenever he invited me to be able to speak to his chapter, I hesitated. I was like, will I be safe? Will this work out? And so I slept on it. And so the next day I woke up and I really felt like God was opening a door, right? By creating these opportunities to be able to talk to people that you may not see eye to eye, but at least to be able to have a conversation. And so that's what caused me to begin calling every single OK2A member back to be able to at least start a constructive conversation. I understand, and I don't expect everybody to be able to agree with me with the policy benefits, but at least to be able to get them out there and to be able to talk to as many of members of your important organization as possible. Because this is something I hope to, I'll be honest with you. This is something that I hope to do before I leave office. And if there are ways to be able to make the bill better, to be able to do those things. And so one of the things that we did with the bill to ensure that people who've recently arrived in the state of Oklahoma wouldn't be able to do it is to create a proof of presence part. And so only those people who've been here in the state of Oklahoma and already put down roots and have already been doing these things and are already paying taxes, those would be the only people who would be able to qualify. So if someone comes to the state of Oklahoma, a new arrival in 2025, they wouldn't be able to apply. And so whenever the speaker and the AG came up with their bill, I tried to be able to address this, tried to attach it as an amendment, right? This bill, because the other thing is that for what it does, it serves as an immigrant registration requirement, right? And so if there's someone in the state of Oklahoma, if you give them a choice, either you could be arrested on the spot because you don't have papers, or you can show you paid your taxes, you've had your identity verified by the state of Oklahoma, you've submitted an address and a fingerprint onto the largest law enforcement database in the country, then you can have an ID. And if you have an ID, you're not potentially arrestable under this new law. And so that was my intention, is that right now, if the federal government has failed miserably to be able to address immigration issues in any serious way, that the state of Oklahoma, if the Supreme Court gives us a chance, that we could show them how it's done, that we could identify it comprehensively as opposed to enforcement only. And so, like I said, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to come here. Like I said, it's one of those things that the bill is constantly a work in progress. I'm always open if there's a flaw or something else with it. But just more than anything, I want to talk to you, to your membership, to say, you don't have to agree with it, but it may not be crazy. There may be enough good policy reasons to be able to do it at some point to be able to consider it. And so I'll let the moderator moderate. Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah. Well, first off, I want to say hi to we've got 21 people streaming, watching the streaming.
Okay.
So I want to say hi to Michael Morrison, Karen Waldrop, and Winona Hutzel, and everybody else that's watching. And I'm going to pull rank because I'm going to ask the first question. Then we'll go to y'all.
Fair enough.
I watched this morning before we came in your discussion with Senator Standridge on the floor
Yes.
of the Senate. And it's my understanding, I'm the chairman of the election board here.
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to find out next week for
Right.
sure. But it's my understanding when they register to vote, they're only asked to put down their driver's license number.
Yes,
They're
sir.
not required to show an ID.
Right.
Now, when I go vote, I show my driver's license, a
Yes, sir.
picture ID. But the state law, it's my understanding, I'll find out for sure,
Yes, sir.
but that the only thing that they actually are required by state statute to show when they vote is their voter ID card, which is not a picture ID.
Yes, sir.
Can you address that?
Yes, sir. And so the changes that I explained to you earlier was a result of Senator Standridge's questions the last time that I put this on the floor. Because to be honest with you, you learn as you go along, and I was not aware that you could register to vote online and without actually having someone be able to see your state ID. And so whenever I realized that it was a flaw in my bill, I think it was probably on a Tuesday, I stayed until probably about 1 o'clock in the morning that evening fixing the bill, talking to Service Oklahoma, talking to the election board to be able to see, because we'd already built in that they're automatic auditing, right? There's automatic auditing that Service Oklahoma will send the names of the people who get a driver's license this way to the election board, and they would audit every single person to make sure that they're not a citizen. But what we did is that's when we created the requirements on the driver's license that it'll have that caption on the front, it'll have that message on the back, and the most importantly, to make sure that they never get on the voting rolls in the first place, that their driver's license start would be the only ones that start with an ITIN. And so that way, if anybody tries to register to vote either on a piece of paper or online, the election board, if they see that it starts with those first 4 digits, ITIN, they know that that person's not a citizen. And so that way, if they show up to the polling place, their name won't be on the voter rolls in the first place. Excellent.
Well, Rob raised his hand for, folks, one question at a time. I'll come back to you. Get to your question and keep it short so we can get to everybody that's got a question. Rob, you're up first.
Actually, I have 4 questions, but he's only allowed
One at a
to do
time.
One at a time.
That's it.
So, federal law states you must be a citizen to get a real ID. Will
Yes,
this
sir.
affect our real ID law?
No.
Seeing that we struggled to get it started in the first place?
Excellent question. No, sir. And so this would only be for a real ID, a non-real ID compliant license. And so Oklahoma, fortunately, because there are people still that don't feel comfortable sharing all the information to get a real ID compliant license, we have the choice between the two. And so people, if they were able to get a driver's license with an I-10, it would be a non-real ID compliant license. And one of the things that occurred to me that I want to address as well is to ensure that people don't game the system, right? And so if they have to show their 2024 tax return, and they get a 4-year driver's license, if they come back in 4 years, they got to show 4 years worth of tax returns. And so it's not just one time you pay taxes and then automatically you have a driver's license indefinitely. You have to demonstrate to Service Oklahoma year over year that you continue to pay those taxes. Thank you, sir.
Joe Baden, next.
I think the problem a lot of us have, this is kind of addressing you and Senator Coleman and anyone else,
Yes, sir.
is that everything sounds great on its face,
Yes, sir.
but you're asking us to swallow codifying into law
Yes, sir.
and condoning bad behavior slash illegal activity.
And your question is?
So how do you reconcile
Yes, sir.
asking us to swallow condoning illegal activity in this?
Thank you, sir, for the question. And so I think that all of us I think most all of us would probably be willing to acknowledge that the immigration system has been an abject failure. And so I've been working within that system since 1996. And so I agree that there have been times when the border has been more porous and other times when it hasn't. But basically the United States and the federal government has allowed a population to come into into the United States that have become important contributors to our economy and everything else. And so whenever people talk about immigration reform, and I've tried hard not to make this an immigration bill, I've tried to make it a public safety bill or a registration bill to require, basically, if someone told you that they had a bill that could convince 85,000 undocumented immigrants in the state of Oklahoma to come out of the shadows, to pay their taxes, to be able to register their identity, their address, and give a fingerprint that would go into the largest law enforcement database in the country, I would tend to think that most of you would be in favor of registration, that they come forward and register. And so, like I said, at this point, the federal government's failures on this, absolutely. There are people who have come unlawfully. I'm willing to acknowledge it. And there have been there's been a system created to allow those people to be able to work, right? Entire industries have hired those people. Those people who are working have married American citizens, started families, and created a mess for us to be able to deal with. And so when people talk about an immigration reform, ultimately it needs to be a three-legged stool. And I'm not trying to turn this into an immigration debate because that's a bigger issue we could talk a lot longer about. But really, we have to secure the border, right? Absolutely, positively. For those businesses that need workers, and kind of like Senator Coleman said, can't find American citizens willing or able to do certain jobs, to be able to create a workable guest worker program so that businesses can rely on it, know when their workers are going to come, and then to be able to address the people that have been here for so long. And so right now, like I said, not trying to, but just trying to be able to explain kind of how broken the immigration system is. Right now, if someone were going to apply for their permanent residence based on the time that they've already been here in the United States, they've been here a long time. Does anybody have any idea how long they would have to prove that they were here to be able to apply? So they would have to prove that they've been here since before 1972. So they would have to prove that they've been here for 52 years to be able to get a green card. And so I've been looking for one of those guys for the past 25 years in my law office. I still haven't found one. And so really, that's kind of when you talk about going, and I apologize if this is too long an answer, but when you talk about going to the end of the line, currently, if I'm an American citizen and I apply for my brother in Mexico, you filed the first application, that puts you at the end of the line. The line currently, people who filed their first application in 2001, they're getting green cards right now. So the waiting list is about 24 years. And so same with asylum. You apply for political asylum. Currently, because the system is so broken, it takes 6 to 10 years for you to be able to find out if you win your asylum case or not. And so I am with you that it's, I mean, if Washington had the courage and the political will, this could be fixed. But unfortunately, and like I said, in a completely unpartisan way, there's no real will to be able to do it on either side.
It's a big if.
Yeah.
You know. Okay, Keith, you're next.
Well,
Yes, sir.
most of those people can't speak English, and how are they gonna read English out on our streets? How are they gonna be safe?
That's an
How are
excellent
we gonna be safe?
That's an excellent question as well, sir. And so none of the requirements as far as the requirements to pass a test to be able to get a driver's license would change. And so they would have to take the test, the exact same test as every single other person. And if they don't, I apologize, I don't mean to interrupt, but if they don't pass the test, they don't get a license. And so they have to take the,
A truck driver come in and deliver a piece of equipment.
yes, sir.
That he couldn't speak English. He didn't even know what I was saying.
Right.
But he was a truck driver.
Right.
He got there somehow or another, but.
Right.
But
And so-
I just didn't see how it could be said.
I would love to be able to address all the ills in the state law, but as far as creating too many, I mean, I'm trying to address just the eligibility requirements right now. But currently, there's a prohibition based on a law that was passed 17 years ago that they can't provide the driver's license test in any other language other than English. And so that law is on the books. How people are able to how well they read and write in the language as opposed to speak it, I'm not sure, sir. But I appreciate and respect your question for sure.
Scott, did you have a question?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Seriously, I want to really, truly thank you for coming today. It's not easy for you, and I do appreciate it very much. So I heard you say that you put a lot of work into this bill,
Yes, sir.
and that it will provide some safety for the police officers, it will keep some businesses open, and it will provide our state money.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Our funding documents say that governments are established to secure our rights.
Yes, sir.
How does your bill that provides aid and comfort to these people secure our rights?
Okay, that's an excellent question. And so, I think that it part of the rights of the people who are citizens of the state of Oklahoma are to be safe, right? And currently, if the federal government's failure, and I'm not trying to disagree with you, and I'm trying to answer in good faith, sir, and so I apologize, but if the federal government's failure to be able to do things, I think and I'm not saying that your question's not realistic because it's important, but we have to address the day-to-day reality of where we are in the state of Oklahoma and some of the things that Washington has left for us to be able to resolve. And so, is a driver's license a constitutional right? Absolutely not. Is it a privilege? Right? They call it driving privileges. Is it a privilege? Yes. Is it something that I think that perhaps other people, other than U.S. citizens, should be able to have a chance to be able to do? They already do. And so people who are legal permanent residents, student visas, all those people already have a driver's license. All I'm proposing is to make Oklahoma safer, and to be able, in a variety of different ways, to be able to expand that to the reality of the situation where we have. Thank you, sir.
Michael, you're next.
Yes, sir.
I don't like it.
I don't blame you. It's okay. It won't hurt my feelings.
It's a closer step to citizenship and to
Well,
social services, just that I've worked all my life to get.
yes, sir.
I just don't see how you can justify just giving part. It's going to increase people coming in.
Right.
I guess my question
Yes, sir.
is it really that going to help them get citizenship that much faster? I mean, why can't they just go through the process like everybody else?
That's
I
an
don't like
ex-
them sneaking in behind me and getting all these benefits.
No, understood. And so as far as the benefits, the first part of that, is that okay?
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
And so on the benefits, and so the state of Oklahoma 17 years ago, as part of a bill called House Bill 1804, forbade any undocumented person in the state of Oklahoma from receiving a state benefit. And so it's already on the books, and the federal government as well says that people other than emergency medical services, they're not entitled to means-tested forms of means-tested social services. So as far as housing, as far as medical care, all of those things, they're already written out that they can't do those things. And so as far as trying to be able to create a path to citizenship, if the state of Oklahoma could create a path to citizenship, then ideally we could fix this problem. Unfortunately, that's a federal issue, and so we can't grant someone immigration status because that's something that the state of, that the federal government does. We can't give them a social security number because that's what the federal government does, and we can't declare them a citizen or give them permanent residence. And so I'm just suggesting that this would be something, again, that would allow people, would require people to be able to register their identity so that everybody knows where they live and who they are, which makes it safer for law enforcement. And then also to be able to, because one of the main complaints is that these people don't pay their fair share. And I was able to find out that 33,000 probably are paying their fair share when it comes to income tax, but there are more who could be doing that.
What's the limit of the bill?
Oh God, it's dead this year, and so
Driver's license bill?
yeah,
It was 669.
well, and then there's another one
Oh.
that I filed this year, but it's dead for this year, sir.
Jay, you're next with the question.
Implicit in your designation on the driver's
Yes, sir.
license, is that it would have what you call it, an INIT or something,
I-10, yes sir. ITIN,
ITIN.
yes sir.
Implicit in that is that nobody can apply for a driver's license that doesn't have an ITIN. Is that correct?
As far as someone who's undocumented, or
Yeah.
yes sir. And so currently, absolutely positively, one of the requirements to be able to get a driver's license right now, written into statute, is you have to have a social security number. And so basically what I did in my bill, what I proposed to do, is where it says social security number, put or individual tax ID number. And so it would just make it an either or an or. But no one who hasn't paid taxes gets an individual tax ID number. And so in addition, they would have to, the tax commission said that it would be, they could create a way instantaneously to be able to verify if the person's filed their taxes. And so as a result, they could do it at the counter and know whether or not these people they're paying their fair share or not.
Sherry, you're next.
What gives the illegals the incentive to even file for a driver's license?
What gives them the what?
Why would you go and file and have to pay taxes?
Right.
You know, what gives them, what's
The
the
incentive?
incentive for them to
Excellent question.
file?
And so the incentive is that, and again, I like trying to make the policy issues and explain those things as a board, as opposed to trying to pull at the heartstrings. But for someone, you know, who has, if they're here in the state of Oklahoma and they're driving every day without a driver's license, if they're going to pick up their kids from school or they're driving to work, they're always looking in the rear view mirror to be able to, you know, look at the possibility if they get pulled over and perhaps get arrested for no state driver's license. So from my experience with the Latino community, if the option was opened up, first there would be lines around H&R Block. For all those people who haven't filed their taxes, they would immediately get on the tax rolls. And then after that, they would immediately get in line at the insurance companies to be able to get insurance, because it gives them a little extra security while they're here until the federal government can get their act together and take care of this. And so that would be the incentive. But I can almost certainly guarantee you people would be highly, highly motivated to be able to do it because they don't want problems.
I don't know your name, but you're next.
Hello, sir.
How about you work this hard?
Yeah.
I can see you put a lot into it
Yes, sir.
there. How about dropping that and putting all of that effort into getting Biden to immediately close the border
Right.
and start deporting everybody instead of sending hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine, there where 60% of it or more goes into the pockets of the oligarchs buying more yachts and mansions.
Okay.
Why don't you work on that?
Well,
Okay, we're gonna be
and
nice.
so-
We're gonna be courteous.
No,
And how often do you talk to President Biden?
I've never met with him.
That's
never,
the problem.
Never had my picture taken with him.
Yeah,
And so that
that's-
was the funny thing in the Oklahoma 2A things, Terry, I think you were putting out that said Senator Michael Brooks and Joe Biden are doing this about driver's license. I've never met the man. I swear to
No,
God.
I never said that. No,
I saw
never said
some
that.
screenshots
Yeah,
of
it
it.
wasn't me.
I promise. I mean, it hasn't happened, sir. I appreciate your question, and so from my position, and I'm not trying to discount what you're trying to say, but from my position as a state senator, we're limited in what we can do, and as far as the scope of what happens in Ukraine and these other places, that's something beyond my.
American citizen?
I sure am, sir.
Okay.
No,
Okay. Well, yes, sir.
we're not, we're gonna be courteous,
Well-
or we can leave. That's bottom line.
And
Okay, Aaron, you're the next up. Folks, I'll come back to second and third questions, but everybody gets the first chance, and then I'll come back
I
around.
want to take a second.
Sure.
I appreciate him doing this and coming today. Your frustration is well spent across this room and the state. So I'm going to ask you to keep it confined to that because, like I say, we don't want the reputation for OK2A that we bring people in and then are discourteous to them. And so, and especially if someone's traveled several hours just to get here one way.
I respect that he came here too.
Well, thank you, sir.
I respect that.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate
And,
it.
sir, and like I said, I mean, part of this is that the longer I serve at the Senate, the less I think, the less partisan I become, and the less interested in politics. And so I'm not trying but also the inability for sides to talk to each other. And so I appreciate you very much for coming, asking your question. There are lots of questions I can't answer. I'm just not that smart. But be able to have all those answers. But I'm here, and I appreciate everybody in the room for asking your questions and having a conversation, because I don't think this has ever happened before.
Aaron Means, next question.
I do appreciate peeling back all the different layers of the onion.
Yes.
But after peeling back, isn't the heart of this bill simply to minimize illegal activity? And I know that there will be more than just, we're talking about more than just Latinos.
Right.
Because won't it be beneficial for people all across the globe, those who love America and those who do not love America,
Yes, sir.
being able to get a benefit from this bill if it ever passed?
Well, and so I think that was part of the thing in talking to Republicans that they were concerned about. Whether or not this would create a magnet or an attraction for people who are undocumented who are crossing the border recently or in other states to come to Oklahoma because they would find out that they could get a driver's license here. And so that's why I included in the bill that proof of presence requirement. Because if we're concerned about the other people who are coming and whether or not we're granting them a benefit, if we say, you have to be eligible for the license, you have to be able to submit a 2024 driver's license or 2024 tax return. That means anybody who arrives in the state of Oklahoma after December 31st of this year, they can't get one because they don't have taxable income to be able to file to be able to get that tax return. And so I don't want to. It's not my intention to be able to legitimize unlawful conduct, and so. But at the same time, we live in a reality where this has been kind of glossed over or ignored for 30 years, and I think this is part of the hard part for Washington to be able to resolve it, is because every day it gets a little bit more complicated. But if the Supreme Court has indicated that they're willing to be able to cede some power back to the states to be able to do this, all I'm proposing is to do something comprehensive as opposed to something that's enforcement only, that only does one part. Thank you, sir.
Claude, you're next.
Thank you. It occurs to me that nothing ever happens in a vacuum.
Yes, sir.
And so if we have.
Speak up, please.
All right, it appears to me that nothing occurs in a vacuum.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if we have what illegal agents can have a car,
Yes,
they're
sir.
gonna have a job, right, to pay the insurance and everything else.
Yes, sir.
And so they're gonna have to work, and everybody, so it seemed like it would serve corporate to have these illegal aliens working for lower pay and everything else.
Right.
And if they work for lower pay, and you say about insurance is very expensive.
Yes, sir.
And so even though they have a job, they're gonna have to have food stamps because they can't afford to pay because they keep making so little. And so how do you address that?
I appreciate your question. So number one is that people who are undocumented can't qualify for food stamps. And so they're not eligible on their face. They can't. And so as far as for the people that are here working low wage jobs, I absolutely agree with you. And so I think that over the past 2 centuries, the thing that's made the United States great has been the steady flow of immigrants to the United States, whether they came from England or whether they came from Italy or whether they came from Germany, wherever they came from. The thing that makes our country different and makes our country greater than any other country in the world is you can come to the United States And you can basically, from a country where your future and your potential is predetermined based on where you were born and who your parents are. In the state of, in the United States, that's not true. If it's, basically your success is based on how hard you are willing to work. And so as a result, we see lots of entrepreneurship. Whenever it comes to roofing contractors, you see lots of entrepreneurship and starting little businesses, little restaurants here and there and everything else. But it's because, this is what keeps America great, is those people who are willing to start at the bottom and to be able to work themselves up and know that whatever benefit they receive is directly related or directly dependent on how hard they work.
We don't know who they are though.
Well, and so that,
One question at a time.
But I would just say that you're right. Right now, currently, we don't know who 85,000 people are in the state of Oklahoma because they've not come forward, they've not submitted a passport, and they've not confirmed their identity with the state of Oklahoma. We don't. But if we passed this type of a proposal, we would. Because they would submit a fingerprint and they would be in that same database every single one of us submitted to when we got a license or an ID. And so thank you, sir, for your question. I appreciate it.
You're next.
So if I understand right, everyone that will apply for this state license, right?
Yes,
they'll
ma'am.
be put into a database, their identity will be verified.
Yes, ma'am.
They'll be fingerprinted, their whereabouts will be known, they will
Yes, ma'am.
be established in Oklahoma. Therefore, they're gonna be documented.
Well,
But wait,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
if they're not if it doesn't document them according to the legal structure right now,
Yes,
what
ma'am.
is gonna prevent a segue into that becoming their ability to become documented
Right.
citizens, documented, being able to receive state benefits and that sort of thing? What's gonna prevent this documenting of these individuals? Because that's what you're doing. You're documenting them into a system. You may not be documenting them with citizenship papers,
Yes, ma'am.
but it is a form of documentation.
Right.
What is going to prevent some other, politician or some, to say, hey, we've got this system. Why don't we just use this
Right.
to document these people who've been providing into the state, been providing into the economics, been providing into the
Let's let him
or
answer.
whatever. So,
Yes,
all right.
ma'am. Thank you for your question.
So that's my question.
No, it's
And I
it's a
did
good
have one other, but I'll wait my turn.
Okay, and so no, I appreciate it. And so the thing, I think that keeps, first of all, just because someone has a driver's license, it does not create a path toward legal permanent residence or citizenship. Because that license is issued by the state of Oklahoma, and immigration status is issued only by the federal government. And so the state of Oklahoma doesn't have the power. And so it's from two different parts of the government. And so, like I said, the law enforcement database is called OLEDs. And so whenever I talked to a group of district attorneys, and whenever I told them that I tried to run a bill to expand driver's license eligibility, at first they were kind of taken aback, kind of rural district attorneys. But whenever I mentioned that they would be in OLEDs, and so OLEDs is that national database, they talked about how much easier it would be if someone is suspected of a crime, to be able to have that person on file to be able to do it. And so would it create some sort of documentation for the state of Oklahoma to verify their identity? Absolutely it would. Would it create any additional path toward citizenship or permanent residence? It would not. And like I said, there are 22 states that have already done it, ma'am. Yes, ma'am?
My question is, what safeguards are in place to prevent this from becoming that pathway to them?
To permanent,
This documentation to becoming a pathway for them to gain citizenship? What
Because-
prevention is there?
Thank you, ma'am. And so, and I don't remember which article, but citizenship is granted by the U.S. Constitution, and citizenship is determined by the U.S. government. And so politicians, we talk about citizens of Oklahoma. And so I was talking to one of the Senate staff, and to be honest with you, there's no definition of what a citizen of the state of Oklahoma is. We don't have a definition of citizen in our state statutes. The definition of citizen comes from the U.S. Constitution. And so as a result, the state of Oklahoma cannot make someone a citizen. And it's only the U.S. government that can make someone a citizen. And so I hope I'm answering your question, but I'm trying. No, I'm sorry. I'm trying my best. I promise.
Mr. Volker?
I really am.
Next question back here.
One of many questions, but I'll just stick with one.
Yeah, one at a time.
It's okay.
How, you said that there are like 85,000 undocumented.
Yes, sir.
If they're undocumented, how do you know how many illegal immigrants you have in the state?
That's it. It's a great question. And so I didn't know how to be able to come up with that number. And so on the internet, there's something called Google. And so I Googled, I swear. And so I Googled it to try and find a reputable organization that could give us a number. And so that number of 85,000, I believe it came from the Pew Research Foundation on Immigration Policy. And so it was a number that I was able to get from an organization that I thought it was reputable. But again, if we're able to do something that convinces these people to be able to come out of the shadows, pay their taxes, confirm their identity with state government, and issue that fingerprint, then we'll know who they are and where they are. And so I think that's one of the things that might make people feel safer, for sure.
Rob Bodick, second question.
Yes. Currently, I don't know the bill number, but I'm just gonna call it what it is. They're passing along the impermissible person bill in the state of Oklahoma.
Thank you.
How does this law jive with the impermissible person law?
Yes, sir. Thank you for your question. And so it's House Bill 4156. And so it was a request of the Attorney General's office and the Speaker of the House. And so the state of Texas had already passed a bill called SB 4, which kind of criminalized unlawful presence in the state of Texas. And so both the AG and the Speaker of the House called out the day after the Supreme Court made a decision on the Texas law. They both called out to be able to do something similar in Oklahoma. And so that was 2, maybe 3 weeks ago. And so as a result, they created a law that talks about unlawful occupation. So basically, any person who's here in the state of Oklahoma who's here without status, that they would be guilty of a misdemeanor and subject to up to a year in the county jail and a fine and some other things. And so originally, kind of like what I was saying earlier, I didn't plan on running my driver's license bill this year. I thought people were tired of it, didn't have a chance, there wasn't a path to success. And so I was content to wait until next year. But whenever they came up with this bill that is focused on, if there are 3 stools to immigration reform in the state of Oklahoma might have a chance to address it, they were only focused on one of those legs of the stool, which is enforcement. They weren't focused in both. The Attorney General and the Speaker said it was because of illegal marijuana grows, fentanyl trafficking, and human trafficking, and the influx of new people coming from the border. And so to me, what that meant was that this bill, 4156, was failing to address what we do with the people that are already here. What do we do with that person who's married to an American citizen? What do we do with that person who has 3 or 4 kids that are all American citizens but don't have a path to permanent residence? Federal government currently has no appetite to be able to fix it. And so what I wanted to do is to be able to for those people that are already here, contributing, paying their fair share of taxes, willing to come forward, confirm their identity, to give them the opportunity to choose. Do you want to take a chance on getting arrested? Or would you like to come forward, play by our rules, and get an ID, which would create an exception to being arrested? And so basically, I gave you a long answer, I apologize, but I tried to attach my bill as an amendment to the bill that you're talking about, because it would have created a comprehensive solution, one that addresses multiple parts as opposed to only one way. Thank you, sir.
Let me ask a question in regard to that.
Yes.
4156, right?
Yes.
It's on the governor's desk now.
Yes.
He hadn't signed it yet.
Right.
My question is, if he does sign it and that becomes law, then the illegals will then be classified under state statute definitely as illegal, right? Under 4156.
Not just unlawful, but criminal.
Oh, criminal, okay.
Yes, sir.
So then by that happening, if that happened, does that kill the chance of there ever being a driver's license bill?
So I'll be honest with you. If the governor signs the bill and it becomes law, and right now, if immigrant labor currently in the state of Oklahoma makes up about 7% of the workforce, is what my research has been able to show. And so if 7% of the workforce leaves the state of Oklahoma in a mass exodus in meat processing plants, as concrete finishers, as landscapers and everything else, it's gonna hurt the economy. And if it hurts the economy, then there may be a reaction next session that there might be a willingness to address what you do for those people that are already here and playing by the rules. And so I think if the governor signs this, it doesn't mean that the discussion ends. I think it's just a matter of if they do something that's enforcement only and we discover that it hurts our economy, it makes us less safe, all these other things, that we have an opportunity to be able to come back next session and try and fix it.
Well, there might be a lot of people supporting driver's license if that's on the books, 4156, because then when they go in to get their driver's license, they could arrest them.
Right.
I mean,
no, and so that would be the intention, is if someone were able to come forward and jump through all the hoops and submit to all the things, if they had a driver's license, to create an exception for those people to being listed as a criminal under 4156.
Good answer.
So thank you,
Susan
sir.
Kim, you're next. Kim's Gym, everybody.
Yes. Yes. Hey.
It sounds real touchy-feely to say.
Yeah.
You have to say immigrants are coming in.
Well-
Have you ever been to Ellis Island?
Yes, I've been to Ellis Island,
They were
and
so picky back then. We're not picky now.
I was. It was before my time when it was open, and so I've been there to be able to learn, and so. And so I've talked to a lot of people whose families have come through Ellis Island, and I don't know how picky they were or how many people they sent back on boats, but I know that I talked to people whose names were changed because of, to make their names more American and things like that. And so like I said, this is, I mean, for better or for worse, I think that the United States has become dependent on this labor to be able to get things done, and so what I tell people is, if you eat in a restaurant, probably 7 chances out of 10, the people who are in the back cooking the food probably would be impacted by this law. If you eaten a piece of produce or bought a piece of produce from a supermarket, probably 9 chances out of 10 that it was picked by someone who was an immigrant, right? And so to be able to acknowledge those things, and again, not to get crossways about it, but just to acknowledge the reality of our situation and say, look, if the government's not going to set rules, if the federal government's not going to set rules, the state of Oklahoma, we can.
What about the people raising?
One question at a time. Yes, Joe, you're up next for your second question.
Yes, sir.
By the way, the plaque at Ellis Island was added after the fact. So as you talked.
Yes, sir.
My list of 4 questions has grown to like 7. I'll go with this one for now.
It's okay.
One at a time.
I'll go with this one. So, given our brave and liberty-minded legislators,
Yes, sir.
working towards zero income tax,
Yes, sir.
suddenly your $26 to $76 million in state income tax revenue has disappeared, thus evaporating
Right.
your 3 legs of your stool.
Maybe.
Does that help, or how does that affect you selling this to us?
Thank you, sir. And so it's a good question. And so whenever I came up with the idea, I have to admit to you guys, when I get up in the morning and I'm taking the shower, it's when the ideas normally hit me. And so when the idea hit me, instead of giving the federal government the power to decide who gets a license, for the state to come to take it back and say it's based on paying taxes, then whenever I talk to other state legislators in other states that haven't done it yet, so I had a chance to talk to legislators in Texas. My model would not work in Texas because they don't have a state income tax. And so, but I also understand that if we're going to eventually eliminate the state income tax in the state of Oklahoma, if that happens, we're going to have to supplement it with other forms or streams of revenue. And so I'm not sure exactly what those streams may be to be able to supplement for, or the loss of revenue. And so to be able to see, but I mean, if that's something, I mean, God, if it were to work, and if my bill were able to pass, it's always something that can be modified by legislators in the future if state income tax isn't a thing anymore, to be able to make sure that those people remain accountable and that they continue to pay their fair share, sir. And so, like I said, I can't see the future, but it's something that the legislature could always address again in the future.
And you can call me Mr. Blue because I'm holding my breath until the tax gets eliminated.
Right? Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
second question here.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Everybody's watching.
That's okay.
Okay, I just wonder if you're either a very good actor.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or you've been kind of in a cave under a rock. Do you realize there's over 15 million illegal alien invaders in this country, and that there are hundreds of thousands of them that are military-age men, CCP, and other countries that hate America.
Is that your question?
All in every single state.
Okay, sir.
And by your standing.
Your question, please, no speeches.
Okay. So why you're standing for this with other Democrats and rhinos?
What is your question, please? We're not doing speeches. If you've got a question, ask it. If not, I'm going to go to Aaron again. Question.
Why are you standing for the destruction of Americans in America?
Okay, and so, sir, perhaps some of our perspectives are different on standing for America, and I want to be, like I said, I'm respectful, and I part of the conversation is to be able to talk back and forth and feel safe to be able to say what you think. And so I understand your question. Perhaps my perspective of protecting America means being able to verify people, to be able to know kind of who they are and what's going on. Like I said, the thing that makes the United States unique is that there's been a steady flow of immigrants, ideally through a legal process, but there's been a steady flow of immigrants that have really been the lifeblood of being able to fill those positions on the bottom and having the dream to work their way up. And so I'm a terrible actor. I have a terrible poker face. My wife will tell you the second that she asks me a question and I don't want to give her the answer, she can tell by my face. So I'm a terrible actor. I'm lucky enough I don't live under a rock or a cave. But so my other job when I'm not at the Capitol is I'm an immigration lawyer. And so what I do is I work hard to be able to help people do things the right way, to get people legal the right way. Right? And so for those people where there's a path to be able to do it the right way, to be able to make citizens, right? The right way. And so one of the things that we had an office meeting at the law office yesterday is I'm curious in 25 years how many U.S. citizens my office has made, right? And the security clearances and the concerns that you have, it hasn't been a huge problem or a huge situation in my law office. But I think it's real. And I think that USCIS, whenever they consider applications, they do go through a stringent background check based on my experience representing clients there. And so to make sure that those people who should not become U.S. citizens or permanent residents, that they don't. And so I'm not trying to defend them but the law could give them better ways to be able to address it. But thank you, sir.
Aaron Means, next.
My question actually kind of relates to what you're just talking about.
Yes, sir.
Would this bill have a provision to be able to establish long-term history of who this person is? Does it go back to their own home country, or would it allow someone to actually create
That's an excellent
ID, an identification?
Yes, sir.
All you really have now are fingerprints and some brand new name
Yes, sir.
that someone might be creating on the spot, even though they may have been in the country for some length of time. The amount of time that you needed.
It's an excellent.
Will the bill have a provision to go back
Yes, sir.
to their own so-called home country to verify who they really are?
It's an excellent question. And so what we would do as far as to be able to verify their identity, right? Because I keep on saying they got to file their taxes, they got to prove their identity in the state of Oklahoma before they get a license. And so the only way that they would be able to get a driver's license is if they had a passport from their country. Because a passport, to me, is the very best form of identity that you can have with the most security features. And if it's something that enables someone to travel internationally, not just to the United States, But all over the world, that's the accepted form of identification, that a person would not be able to get a driver's license unless they had a passport from their country and they show that to state officials and they confirm their identity. But it's an excellent question.
Jay, you're next.
Numbers that you threw out, 85,000
Yes, sir.
Oklahoma residents who are illegals,
Yes, sir.
undocumented.
Yes.
33,000 that already have their tax ID number.
Yes, sir.
52,000 that don't.
Yes.
Why not turn the effort to identify those 52,000 and force them to get their ID instead of giving them an opportunity to get a driver's license?
Right.
Because we all know there is a clandestine industry in Oklahoma as well as every other state that's producing fake driver's licenses, social security cards, anything they want. It's going on here.
Right.
Why not force them to register? Good question.
Well, and so the hard part is whether or not there's enough law enforcement to be, and whether or not the priorities are there to try and find these people if you don't have an address, you don't have a name, and you don't have that fingerprint.
Well, somebody added to get the 85,000.
And so, like I said, this is a way to be able to have it and to know it. And so as far as, how, what type of police force it would take and the amount of expense it would take to individually investigate either the 52,000 or the 85,000 to verify who they are, who they aren't, and then to be able to deal with situations like that, I think it would be mind-boggling. But to be able to create a choice for these people that are here, either they play by the rules or they subject themselves to being arrested.
Scott, next question.
Thanks, sir. Keeping in mind the Webster's dictionary definition of invasion.
Yes, sir.
Would you consider the crisis at our southern border an invasion? If not, what is your definition? If so, how does your bill not provide aid and comfort to those invading our country?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And so I don't know invasion, incursion, what the right word is, but I'm willing to accept and acknowledge that even as a Democrat, right, that there's a crisis at the border, that currently that the resources and the people who are working along the border are overwhelmed, and so, with the number of people that are coming. And so having been an immigration attorney for almost 30 years, I've never seen anything like this. And so I will agree with you. Maybe I don't know about the word, if it's invasion, incursion, whatever it is. I don't know if the word so much matters as opposed to being able to get over the hurdle and have people deny it and say it's not happening, right? And so I was pleasantly surprised whenever the bill 4156, whenever it came up in the House and in the Senate, there wasn't one Democrat or anyone else that tried to say that a crisis isn't going on. It is. And so I would not disrespect this crowd by trying to pretend that it's not.
Rob Bodick.
And sir, you said you went out and talked to a lot of different agencies, law enforcement agencies.
Yes, sir.
I imagine like Chamber of Commerce,
Yes.
Insurance agencies, stuff like that.
Yes.
Who all has voted to endorse this bill?
Okay, and so since there's not a bill this year and it's dead, then so there's no endorsements this year. People who've endorsed it previously, okay, whenever it's run previously. We've had the Fraternal Order of Police, we've had the Oklahoma Sheriff's Association, we've had the State Troopers Association, we've had the State Chamber of Commerce, we've had the Oklahoma Insurance Commission, we've had the Farm Bureau also willing to acknowledge how much of agricultural labor could benefit as a result of this. So all of them, we had do you guys follow OCPA? Oklahoma Council on Public Affairs, they endorsed it, right? And Jonathan Small, if you guys read any of his stuff, he wrote an op-ed saying that this was a good idea. And so Oklahoma, what is it, Americans for Prosperity? I think that they also have endorsed this because they're, as conservatives, they're interested in markets. They're interested in being able to grow the economy, and they know that this is an important part of the workforce. And to be able to create more steady and stable streams of labor to be able to grow business, I think and so, ma'am, you talked about the touchy-feelies. I try very, very consciously whenever I'm talking to a group like you guys, to avoid the touchy-feelies, right? Not the super sad stories or anything else. I want to talk policy. I want to talk numbers to be able to address it. And so that's the best number of people that I could come up with off the top of my head, sir.
On that, I spoke with Steve Kelly, our county sheriff here, and he's out of state for a grandson's birthday, so he wasn't able to be here. But he told me that all 77 sheriffs at their association this year were opposing your bill.
Right.
So
it's probably good I didn't run it this year then, too.
so anyway, just some clarification.
Yeah.
They did before, because I remember hearing, I was kind of surprised a year or two ago how many law enforcement agencies were on board. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify that. You're up.
You're asking us to trade finances, is what I'm hearing you say, for sovereignty. Okay, so what percentage is this 33,000 people?
Yes, sir.
What percentage of our state budget are they contributing?
I don't know. Do you know what the state budget is?
So roughly around 14 billion is the state budget.
So a very small percentage.
I
Of that 14 billion, I don't know how much is federal money.
I haven't been around the Capitol long enough to believe that $26 million is a small number. I guess maybe there are other people that have become jaded enough to believe that that's inconsequential. To me, especially if it's being paid by individuals, that's a significant number, and an additional potentially $50 million. That's a big number to me, and so I'm not trying to be disrespectful at all. Is it the end all be all that would create all the financial stability for the state government? It's not, and I can't make this cure every problem. One of the other things that I also did in the bill that just occurred to me, sir, is that for those people who would apply to using a tax ID number to get a driver's license, they would also, based on the bill, be required to pay an additional $50 surcharge to pay for the additional administrative expense in getting a license by increasing the number of people who could. And so for Service Oklahoma, I think it would turn out to be close to $4 to $5 million. Again, a small number, I guess, when it comes for state government, but it would more than pay for the additional services to do it. And so, sir, I'm not suggesting by any stretch of the imagination that somehow we should cede our sovereignty, right?
I'm not downplaying. I know you put a lot of effort into this.
Yes, sir.
And I respect the work you've done.
Right?
But I don't think it's worth it.
Understood, and I can respect you. So at this point, and I don't mean to interrupt, so I'm not crazy, right? So you guys can still call and yell at me if you want to say, are you crazy? But that's why I wanted to come talk to you, is just to be able to show there has been a lot of thought and even if we don't agree on this issue, to be able to start a conversation so that you know that sometimes when people are doing things that there's good reasons for it. And so like I said, I'm flattered that you guys have come. I'm flattered that you stayed and asked me questions, and I'm happy to stay for.
Don Spencer's up
Yes,
next.
sir.
Yeah, for starters, if you're in the state legislature, we already conceded you're partly crazy. So.
Right. You and my wife agree.
By the way, since Don is the boss, he gets as many questions as he wants.
I second that statement, Don.
One thing that's not been addressed,
yes, sir,
is that if a person obtains an Oklahoma driver's license,
yes, sir,
will one of these people be able to carry firearms?
Sir, as far as I know, federal law prohibits people who are undocumented from carrying firearms. And so, as far as I know, and so if it's the same system to be able to carry a firearm as to be able to register to vote or do some of these other things, then there's that I-10 on the number, on the driver's license number. So say, for example, if someone who was undocumented, they're not a citizen, and so I'm not sure if it's still this way, but I believe for those people that aren't U.S. citizens, constitutional carry, which I voted for a long time ago. I know, look at this, what? I did. I think in my first year of session, I voted for constitutional carry. But that currently, I don't think that there's an exception for people like permanent residents, people with green cards. And so I think they still have to do the concealed carry to be able to carry a firearm. And so if someone went to try and go get a concealed carry license and they showed that driver's license and the first four digits are ITIN, then they're going to know that that person is a non-citizen. Yes, sir.
Okay, well, the answer is,
Yeah.
the answer is under Oklahoma state law that's passed under constitutional carry.
Yes, sir.
And we have cleaned up since then that a legal resident, legal alien.
Yes, sir.
Can carry a firearm with a valid Oklahoma driver's
Right.
license. So this would apply that an illegal alien would be able to carry in Oklahoma a weapon, even though they're illegally here with that driver's license.
And so I would not dispute you when it comes to gun law, but I guess that would be state gun law.
Yes.
And so it wouldn't change the fact that currently under federal law, that people who are undocumented are prohibited from being able to carry firearms. And so it's still there.
Well, yeah,
Yes, sir.
that's through an FFL.
And I can't purchase it, can't possess it, as far as I know, because I've done a few federal cases where as a criminal defense attorney, where there have been people charged with alien in possession of a firearm. And so and then the other part of it is for those people who get a driver's license this way. If they receive criminal charges, kind of like that, a federal charge for possessing a firearm, that will close whatever path if one exists, even if they have to wait in line for 20 years to get a green card. If they're charged and convicted criminally, then that will prevent them from ever being able to get their permanent residence. And so there are disincentives, practical disincentives for people not to do some of these things.
Okay, next question.
Yes, sir.
I love your optimism,
Right.
because anybody here that has ever had to deal with a state bureaucracy,
Yes, sir.
that you're saying that one bureaucracy, the voting, can actually work with the driver's license bureaucracy and actually work together smoothly to make sure
Yes, sir.
our voting rights are never
Yes, sir.
interrupted.
And so last time, whenever the bill was on the floor and Senator Standridge and a few other senators were asking questions, again, once that was pointed out to me and I realized that the bill needed work, I pulled the bill that day. And then I went straight back to my office and I got on the phone with the head of the election board and the head of Service Oklahoma. And to their credit, even though sometimes things aren't perfect in state government, they continued to take my calls and my text messages till 11 o'clock that night, coordinating between the two as far as being able to find out how as far as the audits, what is a reasonable time for one to be able to complete an audit? How much time would it be reasonable to be able to submit that information to the election board, and then to be able to talk about those captions on the front of the license, back of the license, and actually being able to make a unique driver's license number to be able to deal with it. And so, like I said, is there a chance one person, maybe one person might slip through the cracks at some point due to state incompetence? Maybe, but I promise you, I have done everything that I can think of, and taken every recommendation to try and ensure that is not what's happening. And I think hopefully, if you guys have talked to me long enough to believe me that that's not my intention. I don't want non-citizens to vote. And I don't think anybody else does, but as an immigration attorney, if someone falsely votes in an election, it's a false claim of citizenship, and it gives them a permanent bar that they can never get their permanent residence in the future. And so for an immigrant to do that, basically they're slitting their own throat or having any hope whatsoever ever to be able to fix their status. And so there are also practical disincentives to doing that.
Well, okay, next, or my last one here too.
Yes, sir.
What I have witnessed in other states that do have this, and which, by the way, California, which is Kamala Harris's home state, has this, and Maryland also.
I've never met her either, by the way.
I don't think you're missing a whole lot.
Right.
Anyway, the term taxation without representation.
Okay.
Which is what this country was founded on.
Yeah.
Because we were being taxed, but we had no representation.
Yes, sir.
There is no doubt in my mind, because Democrats have said this across this country.
Right.
This is the effort to use a driver's license, because you're saying these people are paying taxes,
right,
but they have no representation.
What?
So the next natural step is then they need to be able to vote, so they have representation. That is the major concern about this.
I don't know. I'm sure you've spent enough time at the Capitol that you know that policies and procedures in the state of Oklahoma are. I had to Google it up, right? But that policies and procedures for the state of Oklahoma are a lot different than the policies and procedures in California and other states. And so right now, currently, there are a whole host of immigrants that can't register to vote because they're legal permanent residents. And so as far as I know, I don't know when they began giving people green cards, but those people have never been able to vote. And they've all, I can't guarantee you every single one has, but they've all paid taxes, right? And for years. And there's never been a lawsuit trying to assert that somehow legal permanent residents, people here on student visas, other people who may be paying taxes, that they would be able to get the vote without being a U.S. citizen. So U.S. citizenship, I mean, the right and the privilege to vote is only secured with U.S. citizens, and I strongly support that.
Well, there are city council people in California and in Chicago who are illegal aliens that are being put on these councils. So we see it across the country. That's why we are concerned here. We don't want this state to be a California, a Chicago, or New York. This is a gateway to. It's a gateway drug to that.
Well, and so the only thing that I would say is back originally, whenever Mark Allen told me, that was one of the very first changes that I made, that it says in the actual bill that Service Oklahoma is not to provide driver's license services, motor voter, or any of those kinds of things to someone who gets a driver's license this way. And so it's written in probably, I think, at least 8 or 10 different ways into the bill that it would not allow or create a path toward voting. And so I appreciate your concern. I share it. I mean, you and I agree on it, that non-citizens should not be allowed to vote. And if there are other ways to strengthen the bill to ensure that, then we can.
I'm sorry, the most obvious question I left out.
Yes, sir.
If we have a leader of this country that says these people will be removed upon his election, wouldn't that suffice for having these people removed so we don't have to worry about who's got insurance that's driving into us, who's having wrecks and using our benefits in hospitals and so on?
Well, and so I'm trying to keep things non-political, but
it's
and kind of policy.
It's more political.
Right. Well, it doesn't have to be. And so that's the thing that I keep on saying is coming up with solutions that are policy driven instead of politics driven, right? Instead of looking at polling and saying we need to be able to pass a bill no matter how good or bad it is, just because that's at the top of the polls, instead of coming up with thoughtful policy that actually that comes up with solutions. And so if someone told me earlier, so the estimate is that there are 18 million undocumented people in the state of Oklahoma, or in the country? 15? And so I haven't kept up. Okay, depending on who it is. And so even if we talk about numbers in the state of Oklahoma, $26 million not being that big a number, actually finding and arresting 15 million people, I don't know how long that would take. And the reality of the situation. And so practically speaking, I think that there are lots of politicians who can say all sorts of things and make all sorts of promises, but whether or not it's practical and it actually happens is something else, right? And so it's election season right now. You know, everybody in the world who's currently up for re-election, they're going to tell you what you want to hear, and whether or not it's practical or actually enforceable, it's another thing.
In that same category, because you're telling us that this would be better when every drop of common sense all the way around it, from constitutionally to our own rights to our own security, it just doesn't agree with that.
Well, and so I mean, it's to me that as far as our own safety and everything else, having a fingerprint, having an identity for these people it would be helpful. As far as our own security, as far as unjust or unlawful taxation, rather than the state of Oklahoma trying to increase taxes at some point or another, having additional revenue sources and making sure that everybody else is paying their fair share is something else. And then also, in addition to that, potentially reducing the number of uninsured motorists on the streets. So if you're injured in a car accident, that there's some way to be able to receive medical care is another way that I believe that this bill makes us safer. And so you and I may disagree in what the definition of safety is, but those are ways that I think that happens, respectfully.
I agree, we disagree.
Okay.
Folks, it's 1:35. Senator Brooks has to get back to Oklahoma City, and there's some pretty serious storms rolling in. So we're going to go ahead and wind it up and let him get on the roads and get home safely. I want to thank you for coming, Senator.
My pleasure.
And let's give him a hand. Ken, just a minute. Ken, would you like to say a few words? No. Don?
Oh, thank you guys so much for making it up here.
Yes. Sir, I may have run out of time. I didn't bring it up.
Supported it in the past. Whether or not I support it in the future remains to be seen. I did vote against it on Tuesday. He had commitment to put this in the House Bill 4136. I voted no.